live. Excellent. We're in the middle of a conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Hi. Welcome to Facebook Live. We already started without you. It's an awesome party here. We're here at Bathurst Memorial Entertainment Centre, and we are doing a live interview tonight with the extraordinary Tracy Sorensen. My name is Kate Smith, and I'm a performer, and I'm recently dipping my toe into podcasting. So it's really exciting to be able to do a live podcast to camera with the gorgeous Tracy, because of course, as you know, we can't be in person, but we are in person with many cameras and a great setup here. So one thing I wanted to say as you join us here, feel free if you've got any questions that you have for Tracy as we start to chat about her latest work. You're more than welcome to pop the comments on the Facebook page, and we will get to those as we go, because I can see them in the chat function here. So with that, we shall kick off. I would like to do a proper interview introduction for Tracy, because her background is really, really interesting, and I am going to read that. So Tracy is a novelist, a freelance journalist and video maker. She's a PhD candidate, and her unique voice traverses multiple platforms. She literally crafts unique worlds that reveal our inner frailties, prejudices, yearnings and failings. Tracy's voice is beguiling, bold and Australian. Her first novel, The Lucky Galah, which I'm sure many of you have read, is a wry tale about Australia that happens to be told by a galah. The Lucky Galah was published in 2018 and was longlisted for the 2019 Miles Franklin Award. Not bad. Shortlisted for many others, including the Readings Prize for New Australian Fiction, the New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards and the Russell Humour Awards, amongst others. Tracy is knee-deep in her second novel, The Pouch of Douglas, the working title, for which she was awarded the Judith Harris Writer-in-Residence Fellowship from the University of Sydney's Charles Perkins Centre in 2019. It is with great pleasure that I welcome the beautiful Tracy Sorensen. Hi, Tracy.
Hi, Kate. It's lovely to be here.
So we were just talking about all kinds of things, actually, when we were interrupted by the live stream, which we're here actually to do. What I wanted to actually ask Tracy first was, as a creative artist, often one of the things that we have to do to be resilient is to have a diverse career. And I wanted to ask you sort of how you've diversified, because you've had a career across so many channels. What does diversifying look like for you, and what does it bring to each of the aspects of your work that you engage in?
Okay, so I suppose thinking about diversifying kind of brings to mind this idea of like a core business and then, you know, maybe non-core things. But in some ways, the way my life's worked out is that I'm just in motion doing things. So I'm not consciously thinking, okay, now I'm going to go and do this, and now I'm going to go and do this, and now I'm going to go and do this. But it's like, it's actually, I guess in terms of a creative life, it's just been a series of projects, you know. So it's like each project has its own logic, and then somewhere in the whatever that one is, halfway through, 2/3 of the way through or something, the threads appear for a project that kind of spins out of that one. So yeah, so I guess as a young teenager, I wanted to be a writer, you know, because I was reading novels and I had this idea about one day being a novelist. Then I thought I had to do something that would produce an income, so I started off in the journalism field, so kind of doing a bit of that. Yeah, but then I kind of just had opportunities to play, really. I mean, it's just about play, most of it. So play with video, community TV, and then being in community TV allowed me to step into doing, you know, the little pieces on for Prime TV for Arts Out West. You know, ages ago now, but you know, and then teach journalism. Yeah, so blah blah blah. But I think it is just it's just part of. It's just been a matter of doing things and then not even worrying about what the form is. I know I can't sing or dance or act, but if it's anything to do with writing or, you know, communication or any of that kind of stuff, then yeah, I'm quite happy to have a go, or, you know, eager to have a go. So, and it's been mostly, most of it's been about just kind of making my own way with it. The worst moments are when you're kind of asking for permission of something or someone to do creative things, like find me, you know, look at me, and so I've had a bit more, you know, luck on that level more recently, but most of it's just been about being out there and kind of doing it.
There's something really nice that you said about threads, about this, and I think the way you've expressed the essence of a creative life is really beautiful, because it really is about generating your own experience of creating story, and as you say, in whatever form attracts you. So for you, that driving central force is words, and how you're crafting words and how you're shaping words. And that idea of threads is really interesting, because if we kind of jump forward to this sort of particular time in your life when you were diagnosed with really serious cancer, the BRCA mutation gene. Could you talk to us about receiving that diagnosis, but in particular, the decision to start crafting your experience, so threading your experience, if you'll forgive me begging the metaphor there, into a process that was a part of your journey through that really, really challenging time?
Yeah, I think the thread thing, for me, it is kind of more than a metaphor. It is quite literal in my life. Mum, when I was a kid, was a dressmaker, and also a very crafty person. And, you know, she must have taught me at some really early age, because I can't even remember it, but how to crochet. And I used to absolutely love going with Mum to the local library, and we would get those 1970s craft books out, you know, that were all about macrame and crochet and, you know, whatever. And so I suppose that sort of set up this feeling of those kinds of gentle domestic crafts as being very comforting and consoling. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, which was, it was called primary peritoneal cancer, but it's actually a form of ovarian cancer, which is what you know, if you have the BRCA1 gene mutation, which is the same as what Angelina Jolie has, you have this incredibly, well, your odds of getting breast and ovarian cancer become very high. So I got the ovarian cancer version of it, which was very serious. And I had these two great big, impressive, meaty tumours in my abdomen. And I found at that time that I couldn't read, I couldn't make much sense of the world, but I could pick up a crochet hook and just do crochet. It was absolutely my go-to. So I guess it was kind of harking back to those earlier gentle periods of creativity with my mother decades before. So I set about crocheting my internal organs. So I
love it so much. It's just so, okay, so there's crocheting, there's the gentle sound of the clickety-clacky needles, and I come from a very crafty family too, except I have no skills. I can put glasses on my face, but that's about as good as it gets. I'm sure it's because I'm left-handed. But there's crafting and there's crocheting, you know, the blanket or the squares or the, you know, maybe a hat for somebody, maybe a scarf, but you decided to craft your internal organs. And I just think this is so magical. So can you talk about how that manifested? What was it that did it just sort of happen by osmosis, or?
Yeah, why did I do, you know, nothing kind of comes out of nowhere in a sense. And I think I had seen bits of anatomical craft, and anatomical crochet is a thing, it's a field. And so I'd kind of seen it and found it interesting, and but you know, just kind of observed it and enjoyed it. But yeah, I just thought, I think because I had primary peritoneal cancer, which is like cancer of the sac that all the abdomens are held in, and then my doctors were continuously talking about all the different individual organs and how they were possibly affected, or what actually as they were affected, and then you know what we were going to do about this. Yeah, the two things just kind of came together. I can't even tell you, you know, what day it was or how that happened, but I found myself, you know, crocheting I really wanted to crochet the organs that were immediately around the tumours. And so that was kind of like stomach, pancreas, spleen, colon, uterus, and then I knew my greater omentum was going to be taken out. If people haven't heard of the greater omentum, we all have them. It's men and women. It's like a little curtain or apron of fat that hangs down from the stomach and sits over the small intestines. Or over your whole intestines, and it's like this fatty kind of cushion. So I knew they were going to take that out. So yeah, I was kind of just kind of you know, thinking about these things to myself. I have them here since you asked me. I've kind of, this is like part of the large intestine. This is actually Mark II though. The originals are in the other room. This is the small intestine. Again, Mark II. So they're in 3 dimensions. So and more this particularly this Mark II lot, not so much the first lot, but more or less life size. So in a way, it was like for me feeling my way into my own insides. So I know some people when they have cancer like that, it's like, oh, I don't want to know too much about it, do what you need to do with me. Whereas I for some reason just was massively curious, you know, and I really wanted to know you know, physically the dimensions of it and everything. So yeah, crocheting these things.
There's something really beautiful about that idea of the gentleness of it and the 3-dimensional space that you actually inhabited, because I know from my own work in the sort of well-being space as a yoga teacher, and particularly I'm a big meditator, and so you're often sitting in a space where you're discussing or experiencing spaciousness and spacelessness and oneness, connectedness, the idea that we actually are atoms moving in space. So to me, there's something very magical and healing about what you were doing in terms of embodying and inhabiting your experience softly, with soft fabrics, with, you know, you talked about drawing your attention to the organs around the tumours. So it's like you're giving loving attention through the practice of a gentle art. Do you think it brought healing to your experience?
Yeah, it was kind of part science, part healing. You know, it was like I was as interested in the, you know, what's the actual shape of these organs. It was all at the level of gross anatomy at that point. Like I've since become much more interested in what are the processes, you know, the hormones and the, you know, nerve endings and the systems as a whole and that kind of stuff. But at that point, it was more, I was just getting my head around the gross anatomy. But I really do agree that it was a very gentle activity, and it was very gentle when I was talking to people about my illness. So, you know, because it was quite a big deal, and particularly in those months, we had no idea where this was going to go, and it was a very real possibility that it wasn't going to go very far at all. You know, I really did countenance the idea that, you know, within a year or so I might not even be here. So it was definitely at that level. So it that was all really difficult and hard stuff. But I just found that, you know, with friends and family, if I just got my organs out and just kind of put them on the table, and moved them around and said, this is here, this is here. It was a very gentle way to walk into that space, as you say, and kind of be there with it. So it was a way of kind of being involved in a situation without fighting it, but also without in any way denying it, you know. So, you know, this is real, this is here, but we will go there gently. Yeah, that's true.
It's really fascinating to me from that creative point of view, how you're bringing embodiment. You really are literally embodying your writing practice in a new space here, because of course from this extraordinary experience, from your survival, your resilience, your health is really on track extraordinarily, and you then went on to sort of stitch the threads and manifest, you know, through your talent and through this extraordinary activity, this fellowship, which is you know, what you're writing now, The Pouch of Douglas. I'd just like to read a little thing, because it's just so great.
Mm-hmm.
The spleen is mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. The greater omentum is busy stress baking scones for the Country Women's Association. And would the pancreas please turn off the computer games for just one moment? This is a quote that I took from a Sydney Morning Herald article about announcing the Fellowship Award, which is a grant that aims to foster links between art and science. So it's just so fabulous to me that you were already curious about the science. You're already living the world of the artist from this other point of view, feeding your life through craft. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I wanted to ask you, did you have any idea at the time that you had another novel waiting?
Not at the time of constructing these soft organs. I was literally just preoccupied with my life and survival and that kind of stuff. And the piece of writing that I was actually preoccupied with and feeling really sad about was the Lucky Galah, because I'd kind of pretty well finished this novel, but then not really finished it. So it was kind of still in the second drawer down or whatever. And I'd had a few attempts at trying to get it out there, but unsuccessfully. But I also knew it needed just that last wave of work, you know, so which I hadn't got to. So, you know, when I was doing those organs, I was kind of sadly thinking about that. So my illness actually propelled me into finishing the Lucky Galah and getting that done, you know, because I just...
Were you doing that at the same time?
Well, I'd been doing the Lucky Galah forever before that. So the Lucky Galah was this novel that I just did in my spare time, you know, while I'm teaching and doing all these other things. And I would just kind of write another little bit of it and another little bit of it. So in a sense, I've spent the whole of the 21st century on the Lucky Galah. You know, it was just this long-term... Sorry?
Just casually
here and there. Yeah, just very long, slow burn, you know, with moments of intensity. But yeah, so I thought, oh no, I'm going to die, you know, and I won't have finished this novel, you know. So I do remember being like really ill in Sydney and being about to go off and have chemo at Westmead and major surgery and all this kind of stuff. And I'm there writing little instructions and trying to get the file together so that, you know, friends or family could just sort of like know that this was the final manuscript, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that was preoccupying me much more. So it wasn't until, you know, well after I actually, you know, finished treatment and was just mercifully given this all clear at the end of 2014, actually. Well, not the all clear, but remission, you know, really strongly, you're now in remission. And, you know, and I was constantly being monitored and having more tests, and they were just constantly coming back clear, you know, you're fine. And so I was quite legendary amongst my doctors, really, because a lot of women with that particular type of, well, you know, the chances of survival are actually not that great. You know, the 5-year survival rate was something like 40%. So the odds were that I wouldn't survive or get through it. So anyway, once all that did eventuate and I was clear, then I just started to return to some of the threads. Again, it's these threads, you know, that had emerged while I was crocheting these organs, and also while I was thinking about Dr. Douglas, because while I was studying my own anatomy, I discovered this part of the human, the female anatomy, which is called the pouch of Douglas, which is where one of my tumours was. And again, it's like the greater omentum. Most people have never heard of it. You only hear about these things if something goes wrong. So Dr. Douglas, who named this bit of territory of the female body, is a fascinating character, and there's a really fascinating story that goes with that. And it was almost too good to be true. It was just fabulous, this story. So, you know, the threads are there. I'm there in my guts, or I've been there, and you know, it's like Dr. Douglas and the different organs start calling to me. So again, I can't exactly pinpoint when it started to form into the idea that this is my next novel or my next book, but it did start to form. I guess I did, you know, the thing about cancer is that for a writer, it's just fabulous material, you know. So you suddenly have something that, you know, has a definite beginning, middle and end, or one way or another, or there's this sense of what's going to happen next, and it's almost immediately compelling for everyone. So, you know, it's like, yeah, ready-made. But I sort of toyed with the idea of, you know, a more conventional cancer memoir as the next thing I would write, but that never really got me all that excited. I was kind of more excited about these threads that were staying right there in the guts, as opposed to, you know, the experience of this woman called Tracy Sorensen. I just found this other angle kind of a bit more interesting.
You said actually I think it was the first blog that you wrote, the Squawking Galah, because one of the things that I wanted to mention was that I started following your blog, and we'd obviously knew each other sort of as colleagues at the university, and we'd had chats here and there, but I'd never read your writing, and I was an avid fan of the blog. I really loved it. It just really it captured me just heart and soul, and so I became a bit of a fan. And so I was revisiting the blog the other night as I was preparing the questions, and you write something really beautiful about you know, the first post you made about after going back to visit Carnarvon after the Lucky Galah was published. And obviously Lucky Galah is set in Carnarvon, which is where you grew up. And, you know, obviously everybody reads the book and goes, oh, my God, who am I? And, you know, and you say on your gosh, I've got a really bad printout here. Let me just find a better one. Where is it? You say, the Lucky Galah isn't all beer and Skittles. It encompasses darker corners of Australian life and politics and psyche. The risk of being excommunicated is ever present. This was a reference to writing the book about your hometown. So I really love that the book does encompass darker corners of Australian psyche and politics, using this incredibly piercing, we were just talking about it before, it's really piercing humour. It's very, very funny, but it's on an edge, you know. It's never cruel, but it's absolutely insightful. And so I wondered, you sort of mentioned that this is a memoir style, and of course, you know, there's a tightrope right there, but you've also talked about this being a genre-defying book. So can you speak to this idea that the fellowship is awarded to a writer to explore the links between art and science? And this sort of dance in the sort of world of memoir, but really you're bringing this other incredible point of view from this sort of embodied point of view to the work. Can you speak to that at all for the audience?
Yeah, but the fear of being excommunicated one way or another is there a lot. You know, and I guess what I mean is like, it's impossible for people not to read things into things that you've written, and it's also, as a writer, impossible not to use the reality and material of your own life. But of course, in doing it, it's always a parallel universe. It's not the actual thing, and you're exaggerating some things, completely ignoring and censoring others or whatever. So, you know, it's not, there's nothing, yeah. So, but still, you know, most people assume there's a lot of autobiography in things. So with the Lucky Galah, it really was fictional, and the characters really were fictional. But apparently in Carnarvon, people do have discussions about, that's actually so-and-so, isn't it? That's actually so-and-so, you know, which is delightful. And so far I haven't been
so good.
Sorry?
Everyone wants to be in it because they're like, well, that was me.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's right. I haven't been excommunicated. Yeah. And I think it is a dance, as you say, like, you know, being sharp, being absolutely clear-eyed, and some of these people and situations are utterly dreadful, you know, as bad as human beings and human societies can possibly be. That's how bad it gets. And yet somehow do this dance, which is like also with love, you know, also with affection, you know, and simply, you know, yeah. So clear-eyed doesn't mean that you're, you know, yeah. I mean, it's criticism, but with love, you know. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it is a dance. It is a dance, and it's like, you know, yeah. And then the dance that I'm trying to do with this one, the Pouch of Douglas, is a different type of dance, but again, it's a dance because, as you say, it's really interesting. There's a lot of art and science projects around in the world, and I feel so utterly privileged and happy to have won one, you know, got one. But it is an interesting thing about what in particular is expected of you, because what I guess what worries you is that you are expected to be some kind of PR for science, or, you know, explain science, or kind of, yeah. So I've been talking to the people up and down the floors at the Charles Perkins Centre, who are, you know, absolute cutting edge researchers doing medical science, you know, in the petri dishes and labs and things. And so I've had these amazing conversations about, you know, yeah, you know, the gut microbiome and this and that and the science of it. But then what I'm going to make of that is this very different thing. So in some ways, I'm going to be incredibly cavalier with the science, because I'm on a different trip, which is to invoke this sense of agency of the body. We think of our bodies as ours, you know, our own colonized territory, without thinking of them having their own needs and agency. And to me, it's very related to an ecological sensibility. You know, we in the West, you know, this culture thinks of the world as this kind of dead thing that's just a resource that we can consume or move around or make things with, or we think of it as a kind of a venue for what we as the, you know, individual subject can do in the world. And it really just negates this fact, absolute fact, which keeps, you know, biting us in the bum, which is that, you know, this is a completely ridiculous illusion, absolutely ridiculous illusion that we are in command of our lives.
I think that's why I love the Lucky Galah's perspective so very much. I really loved Lucky's perspective, and I loved the way that you play with anthropomorphizing. Is that the word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anthropomorphication. Is that a word? I'm just going to throw that one in there.
Yeah.
Bringing these inanimate or animal subjects into a feeling living space, like Lucky and like the dish in the Lucky Galah, and now Percy the pancreas and live the liver.
Pano the pancreas.
Pano, beg your pardon.
Pano, yeah.
Pano. And to me, I wanted to ask you about that, because I too share that idea around, us being part of the ecology that is, so vast and so unknowable, and to have the humility to explore that space from another point of view is a great, great gift of being a human being, is that you can have the choice to be in or out in a way. And so as a creator of this next piece, that how that sort of gives you perhaps permission by sort of anthropomorphizing these organs. Does it give you permission to say the unsayable? Does it give you permission to explore the unknowable with this device, which is so completely disarming? It is the way to our hearts as readers.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting looking at what you've been doing and then realizing in hindsight what your thing is. And I guess this is my corner, my niche or whatever. Because I'm doing it again. I can't seem to just tell a story from a human subject point of view in a straightforward way. I seem to just gravitate to this other way of doing it. And it is about personification and anthropomorphizing. And I think it is. I think the natural world and our organs are so strange to us that we can't possibly know them, really. Like there's trillions of viruses in every drop of seawater, apparently. Who knew? so like it's this world that's just thick with things going on that we have absolutely nothing to do with, and they have nothing to do with us, and we're all just completely weird to each other, or might not even notice that each other exists. It is a device. It is a device to kind of to jump in there. And it's ridiculous, it's ridiculous that the pancreas is a computer gamer called Pano, and it's ridiculous that the greater Amentum is a CWA lady called Maureen. This is all.
I love her already.
I really love her too, and the Pouch of Douglas has he's a disembodied guy because he's just. This thing that inhabits this space. He doesn't even have his own body. It is a way of getting empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. So because by creating that imagined feeling, or bringing feeling into those spaces, is a way of sort of again threading us to ecology. It's a way of threading us to feel this perspective of these invisible threads that actually link everything to everything.
Beautiful.
Which is so continually disconnected by. And something that you're also doing, of course, is you're studying a PhD, and that's where you're looking at this idea of using craft as a method of communicating climate change. And so, as much as I really want to keep talking about the Pouch of Douglas, I wanted to also ask you, because your work really is in activism around, again, using gentle, disarming, highly creative approaches to communicating really complex issues in this climate space. Can you talk a little bit again about this nature of ecology and linking our empathy to these sort of almost unmentionable subjects now, because they're such hot topics that people people can't hear anymore?
Absolutely. I don't know if this is true, but the thing that I find interesting or want to explore is, just as I found it a gentle way to deal with cancer, can handicrafts be a way to explore other, you know, difficult topics that terrify people. You know, can the same thing work, you know, in that direction as well? So I am exploring that, and yeah, it's true. So these are threads that are threading. I really feel at the moment that all the different threads of my life are kind of coming together. It is quite amazing, because I used to do, you know, climate activism completely separately to, you know, writing over here, and, you know, like everything was like these different activities, which if you see my post-it board behind me, it's like a lot of them used to be blue, which was like the code for all the climate activism, and then I'd do writing would be in pink, and purple would be things I needed to do around the house, etc., etc. So, you know, they were very separate, whereas now I feel like, you know, a lot of the times with things I'm doing, I'm feeling like they're actually like rainbow coloured already, because the threads are all, you know, coming together. So yeah, so shortly after I got well, we had the big fight to save the river in Bathurst against a potential gold mine, and there was, or anyway, it was this big campaign to do with the Macquarie River, and a group of us started crocheting this 80-metre long, it grew quite rapidly to 80 metres, crocheting this great big long thin representation of the Macquarie River. And you know, when we just shut up and sat there and did the crochet, people would come over and say, "What's that? What are you doing?" And it was incredibly approachable. Whereas if we were standing there on the street saying, "Don't do this, don't, you know, do this, don't, you know, blah," you know. So I really felt confirmed in that idea that there's something about these gentle handicrafts that are very disarming, and everyone remembers their grandmother or nana or aunt or mum or whatever. There's also a bit of horror of ladies' handicrafts in the world, I have to say.
Oh, well, I was just going to say it's a feminist act.
Yes.
And this is the thing, right? And this is
yeah.
what you're working on is this, you're inverting, it's disruptive. And what we like to do is we like to put women's business at the bottom of the basket. Why all of the handicrafts, and we like to laugh at the CWA when they're incredibly powerful women who've been responsible for keeping people alive for a long time, you know, using handicrafts, using skills, using cooking, using making to care for people. So I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about why these things are seen as reductive, when in actual fact they're spaces of great sharing and great comfort, literal and figurative. So I think it's very subversive to use it as activism. I think it's a really powerful act.
It is, and again, it's, you know, it's out there, it's a thing. It's certainly nothing that you know, I've invented. There's the knitting manners against coal seam gas. There's a lot of people doing craftivism, yarn bombing, where everyone was putting, you know, like crocheting coats for trees and things, was kind of in that territory as well, possibly less overtly activist. Yeah, but I find the most successful ones are the ones that leave a question or just leave it to people to approach. Like I did crochet Stop Coal, you know, in giant crocheted granny square letters, and I actually doing it, you know, it was good to do it, and that's still an object that can be carted around to the front lines, but it you know, there was nothing lovely about that. I could have been, it was more or less like painting a banner or something. And then when I took it places, people responded to it because the words were just so big and fierce. I found it much gentler and more open to just do something like a river that kind of speaks for itself, or could be speaking multiple different things. So yeah, I think I like open-endedness, and again that thread metaphor, the stitches that can be easily unravelled, the work that you've created where you can actually see how the stitches were made, but they could just as easily be made in a different way. I kind of, particularly, you know, as an artist or as a writer, I'm much more interested in open-endedness than just closing things off and saying this is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful, and particularly where we live. You know, we live in a place which is politically a national party seat, and so that's very, very much the majority. And so gentle conversations or open-ended conversations or conversations that invite an opportunity to have a conversation are actually quite hard to find.
Yeah.
So most of the time those conversations are avoided because most of the people we know, we don't discuss. It's sort of obvious how people are voting in some ways, depending on what we're wearing. You know, that's really superficial. But actually in other ways, you know, we're really up together here in these smaller places. And so it's nice. What interests me and what intrigues me and why I'm interested in what you're doing is that there is an openness and a gentleness to approaching the opportunity to have a conversation, to plant the seeds of a different point of view in a way that's much safer.
Yeah.
And because the other way hasn't really been working. So,
no.
You know, I'm really interested in that.
I mean, people, the minute you tell people they're wrong or you disagree or something like that, basically all we do is we just shut down and, you know, we you know, fortify ourselves. It rarely works, you know, to just come straight at people. Having said that, I think there's times to do that.
Sure,
you know,
of course.
without doubt. But, you know, so it's not like either or, but it is, I agree. It's, you know, if you want to actually be effective, it's worth working out ways of, well, not even be effective. If you just want to be part of a conversation, you know, I mean, we don't even know what the answer is. What's the answer? I don't know, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's the urge to create. I mean, what fascinates me in this context is the urge to create sort of propels the conversation. You know, you are part of the Rivianas. You are part of the Climate Action Network. You are a journalist. You have made films. You are a novelist. And in that you've woven your experience of the world. And that's true. You know, it's a continuing conversation that's really, really beautiful. Tracy, thank you so much for joining us tonight on our Zoom and letting us see your groovy notice board behind you. And I'm just going to open up now and see if we've got any questions on the Facebook page. Have we got any questions coming up there at all for Tracy? Or just see if anyone's going to type anything in, because it's going to get typed onto my screen. Kylie, we're just opening up for questions. So while we're waiting for questions, I wanted to sort of do one final thing. There's something else that Tracy wrote a review of the film yesterday, a while ago, on her blog, and wrote something really lovely, which I wanted to share because you're such a beautiful writer. You say, the artist is always striving for work that takes leave of the ground it grew in. Art that comes to you directly in words or images or sounds or movements so powerful that they seem to defy the normal rules of time and space. So unexpected when they first arrive, so fitting when they go, that their creation seems inevitable. I wanted to read that quote of yours at the end because I feel like the work that you're striving to create certainly does do that for your readers. And I'm really, really excited to see what happens with this next phase of yours and how your work moves into, you know, another form, whether it's a mural or a book or whatever. Let me just see, no questions, interesting comments, lots of comments about you caring for the river. Thank you, Tracy, for caring for Macquarie River. Fabulous discussion. Thanks for your help with filmmaking. People are saying thank you to you, Tracy, for all of your work in various aspects of the community, actually, from crafting to activism to, and there are threads connecting us all. So there you go. Tracy Sorensen, thank you so very much. Have a great weekend.
Same to you. Thank you so much, Kate. That was a really lovely conversation.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.